Welcome back. Welcome back to those watching at home and those everybody here. Great to see everybody again. Let's do a very quick review and then we'll jump into tonight's topic. So last week we spoke about the two scenarios of the two boys being woken up by their mothers as a embodiment of the idea that the most important assessment a child will have, we said, is their assessment of themselves. And the voice that we want them to have going through their heads is that they are capable, they are sufficient, and everything that we want them, the good things, and therefore we are the strongest voice that will put that voice into their head. And we went through the different scenarios, the wake-up call, giving choices. Would you like to wake up now? Would you like to wake up in 5 minutes? Would you like me to sew that while it's on you? Would you like to change? Trying to give them a healthy amount of control as far as choice. And we spoke about lots of different options as far as choices go. Some of the other issues that came out of that story in terms of pointing out the positives rather than the negatives. Look at what you've done. You put your shirt on and your pants and your socks. All that we have left is your shoes rather than focusing on what's with your shoes. Are you going to go to the shoes? And we spoke about use that as a springboard to talk about praise, descriptive praise, findings. Anybody have any good opportunities to use that? Where you had, yes? Did it work?
I love you all the time. Me too.
Okay, no, not that I love you. We're gonna get that. That I love you. It seems to be the most popular. I got a lot of comments about that. Did it work?
Yeah.
Did it like cut the conversation off? So I love that one. I use it all the time, as I mentioned last week, and I'm glad that some of you have really picked up on that one. Whenever you have a conversation that's going nowhere and you don't want to continue it, it's a great ending of the conversation. And it seems to work. How about praise? Anyone have any opportunities to focus on describing what you saw? Anyone? Yes or no?
Yes.
Was it helpful?
Very much so.
It is. I'm telling you, I've done that so many times, and it is such a valuable thing. And it really, I guess we as adults, we reject praise when it's evaluative. We really, in ourselves, I hear my own voice when someone says, "Oh, that was amazing." I'm like, no, it wasn't. I really meant to say this instead of saying that. It goes through. But when someone says, "You did this, that, or the other, and it had this impact on me," or this, it just, it's true. So I really want to. You should continue. That's really a great one.
Sorry, just on that point, just like this, I found the describing, like my son plays hockey and whatever, and I find usually when I tell him, "You did great," he's like, "Yeah, whatever." And this time I actually described something that he did, and he was like, "Yeah, well, I didn't do the turn so well." Like he got really excited about it.
I'm telling
it really
you,
works.
it really is an amazing thing. So really focus on that. It works great with your spouses also. Just
different lecture series.
I was just going to say,
just throw it out there. We'll get to that.
Shameless plug.
Okay, so I want to just tie in. There were a couple other things from last week also, but there was one other thing that I wanted to touch from last week's conversation, which is really, again, Faber Maslis, which is really based on creating the environment in our home, the type of words that we use that are building. There was one other idea which I didn't get to, it was on the little handout that I gave out, but we just didn't get to it, and that is the idea of feelings. Chaim Ginat, who wrote the book Between Parent and Child, he really bases his entire structure on the idea that we have feelings. His catchphrase is, birds fly, fish swim, and people feel. And we just do. And children particularly. And he builds a whole book on it, but just again, that uses a tool to be aware of. I just want to focus on 1 or 2 points from what comes out of that idea as it relates to our children and the way that we speak to our children. One idea that he has a lot of is that we as grown-ups, as parents, have a habit of rejecting our children's feelings. And they will say things like, "I'm not cold outside," and we'll say something like, "Yes, you are." Or they'll say, "This soup is too hot," and we'll say, "No, it's not." Or they'll say something like, "I hate my sister," and we'll say something like, "Oh, no, you love your sister." Like, no, I hate my sister. And we can't tolerate when they say that, and so we correct them. And we say, "No, you don't. You love your sister, don't you? Remember?" And then we try to prove to them that they really love their sister. And they're thinking, no, I actually hate my sister. Sometimes we'll say something like, "I hate Bubby." And it's your mother that they're talking about, not your mother-in-law. So be careful not to say, don't ever say that. But they'll say things. They'll say things, and we reject their feelings. So he builds a whole issue, which is I want to touch on now, which listen to yourself and instead of rejecting the feeling, acknowledge it and try to understand it. So when they say, I had the worst birthday party, and you spent untold amounts of money and energy and effort to make them a fantastic party, and you know that they were having a good time. You have the pictures to prove it, and then you get home and they say, that was the worst party ever. So instead of saying anything that you're thinking right now that you would like to say, you would, what's that?
Why?
Right, in order to be like, whoa, it sounds like you had a bad time at the party. And reflect their feeling rather than reject it. And in general, a child comes home very angry and they say, school is terrible, I hate school, this is not fair. We often jump in and correct it because we either see a big picture or we want to see a certain picture. Listen to what they're saying and acknowledge it. Not just, which he describes in his book, so that they learn not to trust themselves. If every time they say something, and they're little kids, they're figuring these things out, they have like, I hate my sister. And we tell them, no, you don't hate your sister. It's a little bit confusing between, well, I do actually. No, I don't. I think I do like this. You like ice cream. You like chicken. No, I don't like it. Like, they're allowed to actually have feelings about certain things, and it's great to reflect that and to name it. For example, just again, I want to just play, like, let's say it's raining outside, and they were planning on having some outside event, either at school or party with friends, and it starts to rain. So what is a 4, 5, 6-year-old going to react? How are they going to react to that? They're going to react very strongly because their day was ruined. Now, we have other things that we have to do, and we really, a big deal, it's raining. Like, hey man, it's life. Like, life throws these things at us. So it's tempting to say something like, what would you say? What would be the wrong way to approach this?
Get over it.
Get over it. It's not so bad. We could play with something else. Anything which doesn't acknowledge that the child is going through a trauma. To us, we'd say, what's the big deal? It's just, okay, so a birthday party didn't happen, or you were planning on playing outside and it didn't happen, or they have in Faber Maslow's book, they have great little cartoons. They have, someone's goldfish died, a child's goldfish dies. So the child comes to the parent and is all teary, like, my goldfish died. So, okay, the child's upset right now. The child is going through an emotional time. We're tempted to gloss over it, and it's like, it's a goldfish. I'll buy you another one. I don't want another goldfish, I want this goldfish. And to listen to yourselves reflect sounds really, that must be really frustrating to have wanted to go outside and you can't. And just leave it at that. And see what happens when you reflect to a child what they're going through, and they get that their parent understands that, oh, that's so sad, your goldfish died. I'm not trying to fix the problem. We like to fix, I'll buy you another one. Just stop crying, please. Do anything, but don't make me deal with it. But they're going through a problem, and it's very soothing if we just acknowledge what they're going through. And words like, wow, that sounds really frustrating, sad, disappointing, or you must be so angry. And usually, again, I've done this many, many times, the conversation actually dissipates very soon afterwards, as opposed to getting into these long-winded debates about whether or not it is a big deal or not a big deal that it's raining outside, and they'll find something else. But just to be sensitive to that. So again, I just want to mention that briefly. Listen to it in your house when a child comes with some emotional response and reflect it back. I want to point out, this one, I like sometimes with spouses, spouses sometimes don't like that. Like, if a spouse is angry, it's oh, you sound angry that I didn't take out the garbage. That's right, I'm angry. I know that. The grown-up knows that. We get it already. We don't need to reflect why they're angry at us, why we didn't do something. But children need it because they're actually trying to learn and figure out their emotions and how it's working. And it's very soothing just to know that somebody got it. On that note, one last point, then we'll move on. When we're the ones going through the emotions, it's okay to express that and always put it in the terms of the I am so frustrated, I am so angry, rather than putting our words on the child. That you have done this, or you are, those are the words when you define the child, you are trouble, you are crazy. That if there's anything that grates on my nerves, as I can't believe I just, when I hear parents say, my kid's crazy, my kid is this, my kid is that, And like the child's there running around, and a parent has just defined the child in any term other than amazing angel, I love them, and it's something other than that. So the child hears that as, I'm crazy, I'm wild, I'm uncontrollable, I am whatever other words. Those are like, we're trying to avoid that, and so it's okay that as a parent, I'm so frustrated when you do that. That's okay. I've now expressed something that I'm going through, and I put it into words. It's so hard for me, so disappointing. That's an okay way to express, and trying to avoid putting it on the child. Okay, just a few points. Just wanted to mention that as tying up from last week. Let me pass these around. I'll move to phase 2. Okay, how are we doing over there? Okay, so again, as I mentioned last week as we introduced it, I wanted to do this in 2 sections. The first section, which we now we're finishing up, is more to do, of course, was how to speak so that we create a certain environment in our home, how to use our words that are building, that are pleasant. The second phase that I wanted to talk about, I introduced, was, well, how do we actually handle an acute crisis? What do we do when we have the meltdown in IGA, when we have the child refusing to get in a car seat, refusing to get in the bath, into bed, you name it. Now what? All the nice words that we can speak of in the world, this is not going to address that issue. How do we handle that situation? So what I'd like to share some thoughts from an approach called Love and Logic. Written by a couple of books, written by 2 gentlemen named Foster Clive and Jim Fay. They're out of Denver, I believe. Just 2 words of background. The books were published back in 1990 and 1992. They are a psychologist, and one is a 40-year educator, principal. And they came up with this approach, which you'll see is very logical, just makes a lot of sense. I have been to a number of their presentations, 2 in-person presentations. I read their book, and I've been doing this for so long. My oldest is about to turn 18. The first time I listened to this was on cassette tapes. For those of you who know, that's a little thing. There's a woman in Houston, Texas named Becky Udman, a frum woman. She's a principal or director of a preschool in one of the schools in Houston. So she's a huge fan of this, and so she gives a whole presentation from like a Jewish frum perspective on this. Hers was just that Marvin story that I started with last week as her story. I say all of this. I am not trained in, they actually have training seminars. I'm not trained in it, so what I'm going to present is from a guy who's been to it, read the book, and is sharing some thoughts as tools. Love and Logic people they're all in. I'm presenting it as, I said, as a tool for, you'll find the right times when anyone who's a real Love and Logic person would listen to what I'm saying tonight, and they would say, that's not really it, it's more severe, it's a tool. I don't want to, I'm going to give credit to where I'm getting it from, but I also want anybody to think like I'm not really doing it justice because I'm using it as a tool. Okay, with all that, what do we really want from our kids? What do we want from them at the end of the day? So this is the outline is just to help us work it through. Those of you who like to read while you learn. So we really want them to be independent. We want them to make wise choices. We want them to leave our houses. Usually when I say that, the men start to laugh and the women start to cry. No, but that's what we want. The goal is that they grow up and they leave, right? That's what we want. We want them to get jobs, to get married, to set up their own family in their own homes, and to be responsible people contributing to society, to their communities. Now, in order for them to get there, so it's our job to provide them with an environment that gives them the opportunity to learn responsibility, to learn what it means to have to make decisions, and to have to deal with the consequences of their decisions, that what they do matters, and we'd like to do that ideally in an environment where the cost is relatively low. Like, I'd like for my child to learn responsibility when the cost is handing in a 4th grade assignment 2 days late, which is a relatively low cost, rather than on their interview for their job when they're not fully prepared because they weren't ready on time. So the stakes are low while they're in our homes. The stakes only get much higher as they go on. So to provide them an opportunity to learn what that means. So let's start with this. Well, let's go through some things. What can we control and what can't we control? Let's go through this list and you'll tell me which things you think we can control. Can you control if your child has a temper tantrum in your kitchen or in IGA? Can you control that? No. No, you can't, right? Do we agree or not? Anyone think you can control that? Because if you do, I will put you up there. Okay, I think that's where we're going to be getting to. I agree with you. right? I can barely control myself. There's no way. Right? So can we agree that we can't really control that temper tantrum?
Yes.
Can we control whether or not a child takes a bath? How about that?
Yes.
Yes.
Until what age? Until what age can we control if a child takes a bath? How old would you put it?
For me, like probably 10, I don't know.
So I would put it much lower, like maybe 10 months.
Yeah,
While you can pick up the child and manage a child. When a child's old enough to run away from you, and you have to chase them. No, there's one thing to like take 3 steps and pick them up by the collar. That's pretty easy. But by the time they get to 4, 5, or 6, what it takes to I'm sure you've tried forcing a child to take a bath before. Anyone try that? How pleasant of an experience is it forcing a child to take a bath? So it's physically possible at a certain age to grab the child, force him in, and bathe him, but you've lost if that's what we're doing. We totally lost the battle. Usually when you go to bed at night, you don't have to I am a great parent. Because my child didn't want to take a bath, and I put him in a headlock and got him into the water like champ over here. Like, if you need lessons, I'll come over here. Like, usually we don't feel that way. What about brushing teeth? Can you force a child to brush teeth? Anyone ever try that?
Sure.
Right? So, I mean, if you have 2 parents, you sort of can. 2 parents, one can pry open the mouth, and the other can try to brush. If you don't have 2 parents, it's really hard to force a child to brush. If a child really doesn't want to brush their teeth, pretty hard to do so. How about your child, particularly daughters, speaking back to you with attitude? Can we control whether or not they do that? Like, can we control if they roll their eyes, or if they do all the other good things that I'm still trying to master, but they seem to get very naturally? No, guys haven't do it. Can you control if your child eats their vegetables? How about if they come to the table for dinner? Okay, so can we control if the child cleans up, hits a sibling, bites a friend on the playground? Can we control these things?
You mean like ensure that they happen or don't happen?
Yes. So, given that really most of these things we can control, and I think if we actually stop and think about it, we'd agree, I can't really control that, we often spend a great deal of time trying. Now that's an important point to start the conversation with of, what can I control? What can I control using superhuman efforts, doing things that I really don't want to be doing to my child, if that's what it takes for me to control it? And yet, how much effort do I spend trying to control that behavior? Now, we actually have 5, I put them on here, highly inefficient, ineffective methods that we use all the time in an attempt to control that which we can't really control. Let's just go through them because they're great. So you should hear them so that we can laugh at ourselves and like remember when we see ourselves doing this, like stop doing it. Number 1, the first greatest ineffective tool that we use are threats. I'm on, I think if you find me inside. And threats usually sound, I think we mentioned this a little bit last week, something along the lines of, if you don't get into the car right now, we are never going out for ice cream again. And we will say things like that, which they sound ridiculous when we say that. I'm telling you, we will say things, we will never have a play date again with so-and-so. And I think our children basically respond to that the way that we would if we would actually hear ourselves. If we would hear ourselves, we would say like, yeah, right, Dad. That sounds really realistic. Like you're never gonna do this again. And so the threats become, we up the ante with them, and they generally fall on deaf ears. And yet we end up trying to keep something which we know we're never really going to end up keeping. And they don't really work. Why else is it a bad approach to use it? Besides the fact that it becomes unrealistic. What's the dynamic that we create with our children?
Fear.
A tremendous amount of fear, and that if they don't do what we deem they need to be doing, then something horrible is going to happen, which they either walk around like maybe they'll remember, but they'll remember, we forget about it. But they have the back of like, will they ever do that? Or they stop taking us seriously. Because we said things, and we didn't carry it out. And so they're either living in fear, or they just reject us out of hand because, yeah, there they go again. Like mom and dad saying these ridiculous things, never gonna do. Warnings we mentioned last week. Warnings is a great one. You know, you'll hear that all around the playground, you'll hear it in shul. That's number one. That's number two. And it's just, it's a great, and you see like, and the children are like, they're like wondering like, what's gonna happen? I don't know where this came up with. I really don't know at what point in human history somebody came up with this idea that when I get to 3, I expect compliance, and that somehow children are supposed to get that message. But it's, along with threats, is usually a totally empty thing.
I started counting this week. I got to 2 that I'm like, oh wait, I can't do the rest of the shtick now. You told me, so I don't know what to do.
Find out this week.
Then we have lectures. This is a great one. You ever see someone or a parent will lecture and they'll say, like in various different forms, sometimes it'll be about like eating. Like, you know, sweetheart, I worked really hard to prepare this dinner, and it's really important to me that you eat a nutritious meal and that you grow strong, and that there are a lot of children in Africa who really appreciate this food. And you give this long lecture, and your children usually react with, wait 1 second, let me get a pen so I can take notes on this, please. Can you just wait 1 second? Or they'll say something like, I never thought of it that way. That's really a great way to look at it. I'm so glad you explained that, why I shouldn't, like, or at the playground, and you'll see a parent will get down on a knee and say like, sweetheart, if you hit somebody, do you know what it would feel like if somebody hit you? You really wouldn't appreciate it. And you give this whole long lecture, and the child is like, you see the child, as soon as you get into lecture mode, we do this as adults too, what happens in our mind as soon as someone starts lecturing us? We hear the tone of a lecture, and it's already like, shut down, I'm not listening to a word you're saying. This one also applies to spouses too. Like, we just don't listen. We don't like being lectured to. We don't like sitting through a lecture and lecturing children or explaining to them a long-winded explanation. It doesn't really go anywhere. Anger. We are human beings. Parents are still human beings. Parents are usually, especially of this age bracket that we're focused on, tired, overworked, frazzled, and get angered easily. Once we hit anger, once we get to that point, take parenting and just put it aside. You cannot parent angry. It's a very simple statement. It is a truism. If anyone ever tried parenting angry, we should be able to record ourselves trying to parent angry at the ridiculous things we either say or do to our beloved children while we're angry. Because we are emotional. When we're emotional, by definition, we're not rational. When we're not rational, we say irrational things that are potentially harmful to ourselves or to our children. There's a great tool I learned in one of the Love and Logic seminars. This I'm going to teach it to you when you're angry. It's called like this: pivot and move. Just like that. Like, wherever your child is, you can practice it. You can stand there, like, pivot, move. Just remember those 2 steps, and the next time you're angry, do not try and parent. Do not. Yeah, we do, because usually it's the child that's the source of our anger, often. And it's because we're frazzled and tired that we have a very little threshold for whatever it is that they do. Ineffective. I guarantee whatever you do. And the last thing, as the great one, is bribes. Bribes is a great technique that we like to use. We turn to bribes because we're so desperate to control the behavior that it's incontrollable. So we turn to, what can we do? What can we do to get control? So we will bribe our child to do it. What's the problem with bribes? Why is that ineffective? You know, why are bribes? We all do it, right? Why is it so ineffective?
Can't do it once.
Because what happens?
You always have to do it every single time.
Because a 2-year-old that's bribed with a lollipop generally turns into a 3-year-old that's going to be bribed with some ice cream, which generally turns into a 4-year-old, which is going to be bribed with some new toy, and a 5. There's no end because
feeding one pigeon.
You learn. We're training our children how the world works, and if we train them that I need you to do something, and the only way that I'm going to get you to do something is for you to get me to give you something. Besides for the fact that we've totally shifted the power dynamic of the relationship, in which the child now basically has become the chief negotiator to say, well, like, what do you got, Dad? That's not enough. That's not enough. That I'll take.
When do
Good.
you say bribes are okay? Like, you know, obviously not all the time, but when there are certain times when you just need something to happen, and it's just.
So I would say this.
You know, everybody does that.
Yeah, 100%. I would say this. All 5 of these things, threats, warning, they're all generally ineffective. And if there was a better way, which I hopefully will learn some better way, we'll start that path tonight. Again, as I was like, we are all human, and we all will do things along the lines that won't happen once in a while. But it's worth knowing as we do it. This is really like, and if you could say like this is a one-time thing, that's fine. It's that when we get into the habit of, and I'm sure you've all seen, or parents just, they get into a habit and everything is with some type of reward, and they have not trained their child to be responsible, they've only trained their child to expect something for everything. And then when they become teenagers and we ask them to help around the house and they totally ignore us, like, why did that happen? And it was all those lollipops back when they were 5 that said, I mean, why should I listen to you? You never expected it, you were demanded and never had to. So those are ineffective things that we excel at, and we use them because we don't have anything else. Because again, we're talking about an uncontrollable behavior, there's something happening, which we would acknowledge if we could step back from the events, we would acknowledge, you can't really control this. But we're so desperate for control that we will turn to anything to try to get it, even though what we turn to generally doesn't work, and it's not really long-term effectiveness. So here we go. What we want to do, this again, basing myself on this love and logic, is love our children enough to let them make mistakes, not do what we want, not do what it would be responsible. Let them experience that. Love them enough to make those mistakes, and then allow the logic of their decisions, meaning their natural consequences, do the teaching. I'm not going to do the teaching, it's a very logical thing. I'm going to allow their choice to do the teaching. Now, it's very simple. I want to go through the steps, and then we'll do a bunch of practical examples. Not every example will work in every family, not every example works for every child, but just to get the sense so that you feel confident trying it. I have been doing this for a long time. It is super effective when, not every situation, but very, very often. Classic examples, just to show everything. I always check my pockets that I have gloves in them during the winter. Why? Because I have very sensitive fingers that crack easily, and if I don't have gloves, they get very cold and I get a lot of pain with it. Why do I check my pockets? Not because anyone said, make sure you check your pockets, make sure you take your gloves. What taught me to do that? Exactly. So without anyone other than I once made the mistake and I didn't have gloves with me, and that's all it takes. No one had to give me a lecture, there were no threats, there were no warnings, it was just, wow, if I don't have gloves, I freeze, and therefore I change my behavior. So, we're in essence creating an environment for our children in which I can't control their behavior. I can't control if they brush their teeth, if they take a bath. I can try fighting with them. But if I do, I'm exhausted, terribly exhausted by the end of the night, and it's not really effective. I'm going to allow them to make decisions and then allow the consequences to teach them. What will what will it look like? Yeah.
But I don't understand if your kids refuse to brush their teeth, then they're just going to get cavities. So
great. So let's use that. That was one of my examples. Let's start. Okay. We'll just go right to that example, and then we're gonna. This is because you asked that question. Time to brush teeth, right? So I call my children into the bath. Time to brush teeth. And my 5-year-old does what 5-year-olds do, and they don't show up. Right? They say, no, they don't show up, they're not here. They don't brush their teeth. Right? So now, what are my options as a parent? I'm sure you, theoretically, because none of you have experienced this. What are our options? I'm sitting in the bathroom. I'm already at the edge of my, I barely have enough energy to get this process done. And I asked my 5-year-old to come to brush your teeth, and he or she didn't come.
There are 5 options right here.
Okay, I tried them all. So I threatened, I've yelled at them, I've called out 1, 2, I'm at 2.5, 2 3/4. If you don't come here to brush your teeth, you'll never get a candy again in the rest of your life. I've tried all of that. So those are my options. What else? What are our options?
Drag them.
Drag them, we could chase them, right? And if you have 2 parents, one holds the mouth open, one brush, we could try that. How about this? This is what it would look like. I call to brush teeth, they don't come. Great, I wait an appropriate amount of time, 30 to 60 seconds, nobody comes. Great, we're on to the next event for the night, which is after brushing teeth, books, bed, whatever it is. And let's say, great, they go to bed. Now they're thinking, I won because I didn't brush my teeth and Dad like forgot. I don't know what's with him, but this is great. We move on to the rest of the night. Again, it might be complicated. Let's just take this one isolated event, and everything works out amazing. Child goes to sleep perfectly because we got this all worked out. Wakes up the next morning, goes off to school. Comes home from school. Now in my house, I don't know your house, when a child comes home, they generally get a snack. Let's just assume, theoretically speaking, that when a child comes home, they'll get a snack. Next day, the child comes home from school. They only want a snack. Say something along the lines of, oh, I'd love to give you a snack, but if you have snacks and you don't brush your teeth, you're going to get cavities. And I wouldn't want to get any cavities, and so since you don't like brushing your teeth, I can't give you a snack today. Guess what happens at that point?
Tantrum.
Possibly. We're gonna deal with that. We will deal with that. We will deal with that. But what's gonna happen? What will happen if you handle yourself correctly during the temper tantrum? What will the net result be?
Brush their teeth that night.
Right. They will try to claim they'll brush their teeth right then and there, which is fine. But for sure, that next night, guaranteed. We're gonna talk about a lot of examples. Guaranteed. That next night, when you say, time to brush teeth, I'm in the bathroom for the next 2 minutes, I am pretty confident, from my own experiences, you will have the pitter-patter of a 5-year-old coming to brush their teeth. Because, assuming now we have to work on how to hold your ground when the ice, we'll get there. But what happened here is, I can't control if you brush your teeth, but I'm the parent here, I can control ice cream after school, that I can control. And if I normally give ice cream or a cookie, whatever it may be, and again, there are lots of ways to figure this out, and it's a very logical thing that if you don't brush your teeth, you get cavities. It's not a made-up punishment of, well, you didn't brush your teeth, so therefore you have to take a cold shower tonight. You didn't brush your teeth, you can't have candy. It's a perfectly logical consequence of, if you don't brush your teeth, it's not safe for me to give you candy that's going to sit in you. That's just not safe for me to do that. I really would like to, I can. You will have a child that's going to say, this didn't work out well for me. And they'll say, I'll brush my teeth right now. Now you have a couple, we'll get into whether or not you want to allow them to do that now or wait till tonight. We can talk about that. But the bottom line is, they made a decision. I am not sweating it out when they make that decision at night. It's not worth it for me. Because I know in my back pocket, I have a very natural consequence of that decision that they're not gonna like. And that it's not my problem, it's actually their problem. Now, again, just simple example, we have lots to talk about, but it's the same idea over and over again. Part of what we're trying to do with this method, this tool, is a person only problem solves when they own the problem. It's a rule. If somebody else owns a problem, and this is true in our own workplaces of work, if it's not my problem, if the buck doesn't stop with me, how much energy am I going to invest in solving whatever problem is there? It's not my problem.
Do you think it would be less effective for that theory if at the time that they don't come to brush their teeth the night before, that you said, by the way, I just want to tell you what happens if you don't brush your teeth?
We'll talk about some examples yes, some examples no. Sometimes it's not even worth doing that, and we want it just to be natural. They get the lesson, and you'll see, sometimes yes, sometimes no. But they need to own the problem. As long as we own the child's problem, the child is not learning, growing, developing any of the skills we really want them to have because it's not my problem. Schools, now within like principal discussions, they talk about building helicopter pads in front of their schools because the parents are landing so often to address every problem of their tzatzkala that they're creating helicopter pads so that because the parents are in the school 30 times a day. The child forgot their lunch, the child forgot their assignment, this teacher said something not nice, this child said something nice to my child, and the parent is there all the time. So the child, it's not my problem. It's, hey Dad, I forgot my lunch. It's your problem. Go bring me my lunch. You forgot. The child has no responsibility because the parent has adopted, I'll solve every problem you have. You don't worry about a little thing, sweetheart. And therefore the child doesn't because mom or dad is going to be there. What would happen if instead of the parent delivering the assignment in grade 4, the child calls the parent and says, I forgot my assignments on the kitchen table. And the parent said, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm out at work, I'm not available. Then what happens? What happens next? Now, the truth is you probably are at work and you'd have to drop everything to come back. And you say, oh my goodness, that stinks, that's terrible, I feel so bad, what's going to happen? I wish I could, I'm not available. Who does the child get angry at now? I mean, they can try to get angry at you, but if you, and we'll talk about how to avoid the child getting angry at you. What's going to happen to the child now?
They won't hand it in.
They won't hand it in. In other words, either I take responsibility for my child forgetting their assignments, or my child gets in trouble. How high are those stakes in grade 4 when my child doesn't hand in their assignment? That's pretty low. What did the child learn?
Remember my assignment.
If I bring it to them, they've learned nothing other than mommy or daddy are at my beck and call to take care of me always. And then those are children when they don't get their first job because they like showed up without their resume and it wasn't organized and they didn't have everything. Like, I don't understand why I didn't get the job. Like, I'm so amazing. Like, well, maybe, but this is what it takes to be responsible. So again, this is just the theory of I didn't say to my child in that example again. I don't say to my child, you know what happens if you don't leave your paper? I don't lecture them. I don't say anything. I just allow the situation to play itself out and let that teach the child. Now let's go through a little bit more of the formalities of this, and there are a lot of examples. You will see, again, a real love and logic person would take this to the nth degree and they'd be like real serious about it. And it can be really severe at times, which I'll talk about. But as a tool, in some less severe, I think everybody should use it because of its value. Let's go through a little bit. The 4 steps. Here are the 4 steps to this tool. Number 1, you set firm and consistent loving limits, meaning you let the child know what the rules are. Now sometimes we don't have to do that. For example, bringing in a report, I don't have to set that. They know already, they got their assignment. Somebody else did that already. But sometimes around the house, we have to set the limits, which would sound like, depending on the scenario, dinner's on the table. Dinner's on the table for the next 30 minutes. Some of you have more than, if you have 2 children or more than 2 children, or even sometimes have 2 children, dinner can take 6 hours because they never come, and then they come, and then this one starts, and this one finishes, and then this one doesn't want what you have. It can literally take 6 hours to do dinner for 2 people. If you have 5 children, believe me, it can take an entire night. So we decided we are not doing that anymore. Here are the rules. Dinner's on the table, and it's on the table for 30 minutes. And after 30 minutes, guess what happens? Kitchen closes. I set a limit. I didn't warn anybody. I'm not telling you you're going to go to bed hungry. I'm just telling you this is the rule. Hands, you could say, hands are not for hitting. Okay, I just established to my child the rules. Hands are not for hitting. This computer is not for touching. Whatever the situation, depending on the age of the child, I'm just letting the child know they now have the limits, what the rules are. Then, we wait, step number 2, for the child to blow it. Now, we're not actually hoping that our child fails, but we're sort of hoping that they fail. Meaning, and I say that in a funny kind of way, but the way that they will learn is from the experiences. Like, I can't fret every decision in my house because I will be exhausted by the time 7 o'clock rolls around, running after every decision. And here are the rules. I'm serving dinner. It's bath time. And then this is, if they need a time limit, if they need whatever the structure is, whatever works for you and your family and your home, whatever it may be. And then we just wait until something happens. Now let's take examples for little kids, for example. Let's say you have a child that hits. So you're sitting in your family room, you're playing, whatever it be, and one of the children hits a smaller child. So you've already set the limit, they know that already. They know the rule is no hitting. Great, now they just blew it. Okay, now we have that moment that we just dread as parents. Like, what do I do? Like, my child just hit either their sibling or another child. What do I do? Now what do I do? So, they just blew it. The main thing is they need to be, what's the natural consequence of having hit a child is you are removed from the arena. The arena is right now where they want to be, which is the family room where everybody is. You're not ready to be here because your behavior demonstrated, I can't control if you hit or not. But I can control, so again, we're starting with little kids, I can control if you're in this room because I'm bigger than you. And so if you hit, I could say, uh-oh, I see that you're not ready to be here. Using a language like that. I see that you're not ready to be in this room with other children. And then we remove the child from the arena. Now again, we're working with little kids here, but it's a great place to start. Every house should have a room that you designate. In my house, it's called the kvetch room. Kvetchum is the greatest invention ever. It can be anywhere you want. It could be a fun room. It could be a room up in the upstairs, the basement. Doesn't matter. It's just not here. And when a child kvetches or whines or throws a tantrum or hits or does whatever, and we're talking about little kids, that's where they go. And you say something like, uh-oh, I see you're not ready to be here. I see you want to kvetch. I can't control that, but I can control where you kvetch. And I say, and the first time you do it, you'll teach them, and then after they know exactly, we're going to go to the kvetch room, and you take the child. I'm telling you, it's brilliant. You take the child to the kvetch room, and you put them down, and you say, when you're ready to come back whenever you're ready. It is not about a punishment. It is not time out. It is, in this space, we don't hit, whine, kvetch, yell, scream, whatever is going on. I can't control if you want to do that, but again, assuming we're small enough, I can control where you do that. I pick the child up, I say, we're going to go to the kvetch room. I see you're not ready to be here. And I would drop off the child and I would say two things. I would say, whenever you're ready, we'd love to have you back. And I say, would you like me to wait here with you, or do you want to wait by yourself? Those are the lines. Most of the time, I don't even get the words out before my child has run back here, which is fine. I don't mind. I want that to happen. Why? I want them to be back and try again. My goal is not to punish. My goal is to develop behavior that says, if I hit, I can't stay here. If I don't hit, I do stay here. If I kvetch in the kitchen, I get removed. If I don't kvetch, I can stay. Let the child make the decision. I've had many instances where the child says, I want to kvetch. Here you go, do you want me to stay here? Yes. Sometimes no. Sometimes I say to them, and I like being silly with my kids. So like, you should just know, by the way, I say to them all the time, I'm a better kvetcher than you. And then I'll start to kvetch and whine, and I'll say, I'll show you. And they'll like kick me out, or they'll start laughing. All that is fine. The main goal here is, in this kitchen, you want to throw a temper tantrum, I can't stop you, but again, we're still talking, these are examples of littler kids. I can pick you up still. So you want to have a temper tantrum? It's no problem. I pick you up, I say, I see you're not ready to be here, it's no problem. Here's where we kvetch, and it could be literally from here to there. And I want the child to come back right away. I am not interested in timeout. I'll tell you why I'm personally against timeout. I know everybody likes to use it. What's going through the child's head while they're in timeout?
They're stewing.
Yes. They are angry. And who are they angry at? Yes, they are not angry at themselves for their behavior. They are angry at the parent that put them there. So I don't like timeout, personally. I like putting the control in the child's hand. Understand what you want to say? Here, you're not ready to be here. Whenever you're ready to come back, please join us. The child will run back, and it's fine. Most of the time, they're not totally finished kvetching, and you have to make that call, like, is it good enough or not good enough? And it's totally fine to say, not yet. And again, the more sillier you are, the better, because they'll get out of it, and you want to get them out of that mind into the frontal lobe thinking. If you want to ask them a question, a distracting question is a great tool, just by the way, for a child that's angry, is you want to get them thinking about something. So sometimes if you ask them a question about, you know, who's your friend in school, like a silly thing, they literally, you'll see everything starts turning, like, and then remember their kid, but they've like gotten out of an emotional state by you asking them a question that makes them think about something. But even without that, I want them to run back. The child that hits, I want him back in the arena. I don't want him in timeout. I want him back here, not hitting. I am telling you, I've done this many, many times. A good child worth keeping, will hit a second time.
I was just gonna ask that.
Yeah, a good child will do it a second time.
Then what?
Because they want to see, like, are you serious? Like, is this consistent? They want to know what are the limits. Like, is this really the rules of engagement in this house for now? So they will, like, you'll see them do this. Like, the way to do it is, you'll take the kid hits. You'll say, uh-oh, I see you're not ready to be here. There's no hitting in this room. You pick the child up. When you're ready to come have them be sweet or be nice or stop, whatever language you want to use, feel free to come back as soon as, whoa, I didn't even get to finish the sentence, and they're back. And you go and pretend like you're reading. You'll be like this. And you're watching, and you'll see them. They will actually do this because they're still kids. They don't realize that you're paying attention. They will do that. And that's the kid worth keeping because that is a good child that really is testing the limit. They want to know, like, really? And if you say, oh, I'm so sorry, like Big Brother's watching, I saw that, I know, I see you're not ready. But I really hope you'll be ready soon and you'll come join us. I am telling you, 2 times for sure they'll do it. They'll hit twice, the first and the second time. A third experiment, like some kids yes, some kids no. Beyond that, most kids don't find that game fun. It's just like, it's not so engaging to go back and forth. It's really not. Again, just my experiences. So they will test, and they should test, and it's a great thing. That's a sign of a real experimenter. They really want to know what are the rules. If you're consistent, it's a great tool. Yeah?
Okay, so in the case of relatively serious toddler behavior, like hitting, obviously it's not the end of the world, but I would assume most parents would like some type of apology. So almost like as an adult, you want an admission that the child knows they did something wrong. So where does that apology fit in?
To me, at the age that we're talking about hitting, non-existent.
Not the word sorry.
So what age do you think that's it, an appropriate type of thing?
Again, we're talking about a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old that barely knows. It's a gut reaction from a child. So you want the child to say, I'm sorry, they can say, I'm sorry, but it doesn't mean anything to them.
What I heard from somebody is that they'll mimic what you do. So if you consistently say you're sorry without forcing them, then maybe they'll do it.
I would second that. I think forcing a child to apologize is, it's almost as meaningless if in your professional life, if you did something wrong, and somebody else, in the presence of the person who you wronged, came over to you and said, you really have to apologize. And so you turn to yourself, I'm really sorry. Like, how valuable is that? It's not valuable to the one who was hurt, and it's not valuable to you. So,
sometimes.
There are times. So I think.
Aside.
Yeah, well, obviously.
People want a letter of apology. I'm not even kidding.
No, so as adults, we want apologies. The one who's hurt wants it, but the question is the child that we're dealing with capable of giving it? So how much value should we put in forcing a child to do something? So there's a level of chinuch, of training children to apologize. I could hear that. So to go through the motions, I'm not against it, but I think it'd be more valuable to they model that's what we do, is we apologize. I once, I forgot the context when speaking about this, it came to my attention that one of the worst things that we can do as parents, sometimes we make mistakes and we argue in front of our children. Which is a mistake. In general, it's a mistake. Our children should see us as a unified front. It's okay, but it happens. The worst thing that we can do is argue in front of our children and not make up in front of our children. That's not fair to them. That they saw the yelling or the fighting, and then they go to sleep, and then 2 hours later, when we've had the ability to rejuvenate ourselves and refresh ourselves, then the parents make up and they apologize. Kids didn't see that. They only saw that the bad part that's not fair. If they're going to see the parents lose it, then they need to be there when they learn that, well, this is what happens. Then you apologize, you take responsibility, you make up, and in front of them. That's a better way to teach apology. But let's go through this other thing. Now, we said we wait until the child blows it. Now we have a great learning opportunity. We spoke about some simple examples about in the playroom. And then, and this is the key, with great empathy, we allow the natural consequence to do the teaching. Now this is the key. It has to be with empathy. Now what that means is, you're on the child's side. You actually want to do whatever the child wants. It's just that their decision doesn't allow for it. So that, in the simple example, the ones we've spoken already, I'm taking the child out. So he hits. Now, this is key, because this will make or break the whole process. What potentially, in my mind, is I'm the parent, I'm taking the child out, I can either be angry and vengeful, and as I'm taking the child out, I say, you are not ready to be in here, and I throw the child into the room, and throw it, and say, when you're ready to come back, you can come back. That's not empathy. Or it could be like, oh, I'm so sorry. I want you to be back in. You're not ready. Whenever you're ready, I really want you back. Now there's a huge difference when the child feels that you're actually on their side. I want to give you candy, you got back, I want to give you ice cream when you're back from school, but you don't like brushing your teeth and you're going to get cavities. So I'm sorry, I really would like to. And it's hard to actually be authentic, but you have to be. You have to be, because if you're vengeful, they will pick up on that easily, and then the whole thing falls apart, because now it is your fault. You're the parent, you're being vengeful. You're not really on my side that you just wish that I would do it. It's that you're trying to get back. I mean, it has to be with, I'm going to talk more examples where that comes into play, but when the child blows it, and then the consequences coming, it has to be that you're on their side as much as possible. And then you give the task again. Let's just go through a couple of examples. Kiddush Friday night. Anyone have children who love grape juice on Friday night?
Yes.
Anybody?
Yep.
Would anybody like that your child be at the table when you make Kiddush? It's like a nice thing. You want your child to be there. Can you force your child to be there for Kiddush Friday night? No, you can't. I've tried it. You really can't. But you have a great tool at your disposal. They like grape juice because it's really basically drinking sugar water, and they like that generally. So you could set a very simple rule as you begin Kiddush. You make an announcement as you're making Kiddush. Grape juice is given out to all the children who are at the table for Kiddush. Just make a very simple announcement. Now the rule is set. Everybody knows grape juice is given out to anybody who's at the table. And you start Kiddush. And guess what? There is nobody at your table under the age of 25. They're not there. They're playing. They're busy. Now, you can run around the table, or you can wait for them to come. You can wait all night. Just start Kiddush. You made the rule. You've laid down the groundwork. And guess what's going to happen? You're going to finish Kiddush. And the first week you do this, guess who's at your table? No one. Guess who doesn't get grape juice? Guess who really comes to the table 5 minutes later and asks for grape juice? And you say something with empathy. Oh, I'm so sorry. I know you love grape juice. I love giving you grape juice. But no one was at the table when I finished Kiddush, and so I put it away. We're finished with the grape juice for tonight. Next Friday night, I bet you're going to want to be here. Then pivot and move. Pivot and move.
But they're tantruming now in your dining room.
Great. And then we go to the next step. Oh, I see you're not ready to be here. You laugh. I'm telling you, it works. You go right into the kvetch room because there's not a place for kvetching, and if you're on their side, and then you go to I love you, and then you go to bed. And then you just go to sleep for the night, and then Shabbos is amazing. Now, okay, sometimes there are stages, and you have to deal, in other words, the first time that the temper tantrum that they throw off to not getting grape juice might be too much of it. Don't cave on the grape juice. Don't cave, because that's what we spoke about last week. That's your slot machine. That is you're being an inconsistent parent. That is, we spoke about last week, right? The slot machines? Did I use that example? I spoke about something last week about giving in. Giving in to your children is a slot machine. Abuse. Okay, the reason why it's abuse is because it's a slot machine. Why is a slot machine so addictive? Because it's rigged to every once in a while give you a payout. You just don't know when. But every coin you put in, what do you know? You're one step closer to a final payout. So I can't stop now because it might be the next. Wouldn't it be awful if you paid $50 and then the next guy only gave in 1/4 and then he won? That's horrible. It's like this is my thing. So you keep going because you know at some point you're gonna get it, and it's true. You are. They rig it that way. But you can't stop because you know it's coming. That's why, what I spoke about last week, it's child abuse to sometimes give in, because all you've trained your child is, I know it's coming, I just don't know when. So, do I need to kvetch for 5 minutes? Or do I need to kvetch for 10 minutes? What do I need to do? That's why I love you. We're done. I love you, I love you, I love you. If you say, oh, you didn't come for shot, you didn't make it for Kiddush, I can't give you grape juice this week, and then you sneak him a little bit, the whole thing collapses because mom and dad don't really mean what they say, and the rules aren't rules, and I get whatever I get. And next week, they're not showing up for Kiddush either. Now, you might not value your kids being at Kiddush enough to go through that. I'm using that as an example. If you do, and you want them there, it's the simplest way of getting them there. They will come. Not because you punish them with anything other than, here are the rules. I gave out grape juice to kids who are here. It's pretty reasonable to say that. Grape juice comes Friday night to those who are here for Kiddush. So if you want to be here for Kiddush, come. You know, don't. Yeah.
Is it like, okay, in my house, I give in, we give in all the time. So now it's like this Shabbos I don't give in, they're gonna say, like, what happened to you?
Yeah. They're gonna say, speak to Rabbi Freundlich, it's his fault. They're gonna love you. Kids like structure. It is not a bad thing for them. And again, I believe very strongly when we give in, it actually, it's disconcerting to them that they don't know what the rules are. And that you could say one thing and it ends up happening anyway, I just don't know what I need to do to get it. So we're creating boundaries, we're creating structure, we're creating consistency. And so that when you say something, oh, I got it, it's for real. In the beginning, it is more complicated, but the long term of mom and dad said something, they said it once, and that's it, is what happens. It actually creates an environment where it's just the expectation. Mom and dad says something and that's the way it goes. And there's no reason to push it because they love us. And that's the end of the story. It works, I'm telling you, it's worth trying. Yeah.
So this is challenging, but what about when it's not just your family? Like Friday nights we have a lot of friends over, we have a lot of kids, we have family that parent differently, we have moms, each mom and dad have their own rules, but like now you got the kiddush going, let's say for example. Or like the taking it out to the clutch room. Like what happens to your parenting when you're faced with like, you know, an open house on a Friday night and you're doing this, but then
worse parents you mean.
Your good
Faced
friends.
with worse parents than you.
So are you asking because that your tools won't work there or that it's weird for you to do it in front of them?
I don't know.
So I would say like this. So
I guess a bit of both.
It's a fair question.
No, but
So
also-
one point is like this. Remember
If
this.
parents don't do it and you do it, you look like the worst parents in the room and your kid, the other.
Remember this. You need to love your children more than what someone else thinks of you. So if it's a clear example that they're going to think of me of whatever, but I know that this works for my children, or this is what we've been doing and it's been consistently effective, I love my children more than what they will think of me.
Could you give an example of
Where?
like, for example, the Friday night?
Yeah.
So you, one kid hits another kid, that's not a sibling, it's a friend.
Yes.
So you take them out, you come back, but like the kid's crying, the parents want you to say sorry, we just discussed the like, I don't know, like, are the parents now the ones that discuss?
You can apologize to
On
the
behalf of the
parents
kid.
or to the child. If you feel like you want to make the child apologize, I'm not against that, I just don't know how valuable
I
it is.
agree.
You know, but the main thing is,
And then the kid comes back in, hits the same kid for the second time,
Okay.
and you're like, good, that happened. They're like, I'm never coming back to your house again.
no, this is a fair thing. In other words, in your own house, you can let it go that second time. Here it happens a second time.
Yeah.
So at that point, now the stakes are simply raised a little bit in the sense of, if that child does it again, it's no longer, I can't just bring you to that room and say you can come back whenever you want to come back. Now here's where things get difficult. Do you have the ability to actually, you could say something like, oh, I see you're not ready to be yourself. I'm going to now have to play with you for the rest of the night. Again, that's in the perfect world where you can afford that because you're not needed somewhere else. But you just have to adjust what's the consequence of your child hitting that other child. So if you're not comfortable putting him back in the arena because this is someone else's child, so then they can't go back to that arena. Now the consequence is you need to play in a different room and you'll take a couple of toys and put the child in a different room and stay with the child there. The kids he doesn't want that. I guarantee he does not want to be separate. And so you'll say, I see you're not ready, we're going to play here for a little bit. And then you would say, do you think you're ready to go back now? You just, normally I say, like, I don't like timeout, give them the choice right away. In that kind of environment, it's not, you don't want to do that because it's someone else's kid that's being, so you just make an adjustment and you'd say, okay, I'm going to be with you now because I see you're not ready to go back. And then after a couple of minutes you say, do you think you're ready to try again or not yet? And then you walk, yeah, exactly. It's an effective thing, and it always needs adjustments given the kid and the environment to try to manage that. Let's do some examples. It's the principles are the same, and the way that it manifests itself will change based on the age of the child and the circumstances and what you're able to do. Let's just say cleanup. Let's take an example like cleanup. Kids made a mess. Whatever age, this could be for older kids. I literally was talking to somebody about this with their 13-year-old, and this would apply to a 4-year-old. Whatever it may be. There's a mess on the floor, and you say, okay, we're done playing, it's bath time to clean up. And most children say, okay, right? So they go do something else. And so now you're left with this mess. And they're old enough where they know these are the rules in the house, you take out a toy, you clean it up. Now most of us have gotten to the habit of where we clean up every night after our children. But now we want our children to clean up. And that's a responsible thing that you take out a toy, you clean it up before you finish. So it's time to clean up. And they don't. Okay, now here are our options again. What do? We could... Of course, no. Alright, we don't want to do it. We've tried all of the old things already. So say, fine, we're going on to the next event of the night, which is bath time. Now the mess is still there, and the rest of the night goes without an incident, and they go to bed. And now we go back to the family room, the playroom, and here's a mess. So now what happens?
You want to play?
So they're asleep right now. Let's say, what happens now at night? So what happens now? So in this tool, I clean it up, and I put it away.
Next day.
I put it away. They're gone. That toy's gone. I put it away.
You hide it, you mean?
Yeah, I put it away. It's out of circulation. Now this works really well if it's a toy that they really like. And then the next day they come and they say, "Where are my magnet tiles?" And you say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I asked you to clean them up last night, and they were still out, so I put it away because I see it's not a good toy to play with because it doesn't get cleaned up well, and I'm too tired to clean it up today." Pivot and move away. No lecture. No.
Your children love you.
And then I scream over my shoulder, "I love you guys." And they're like, "What? I want my magnet tiles." I say, like, I know you really want them, but when you show me that you're ready to clean up, I'll be happy to give them back to you. Well, what do I need to do? Play whatever. Well, in an hour, I'm going to call cleanup time. We'll see what happens. Now, again, this is the model. It may or may not work for you. It's worth trying. I find, again, if you read the books, it's all about we're teaching responsibility, we're teaching consequences. Sometimes it works to teach. I don't know if it does or doesn't. I know that I know how I'm handling a situation. And when a situation comes about, I know, okay, these are the steps that I want to go through to figure out how I'm going to handle this. I can't control it. I'm going to figure out what's a natural consequence for this, and then figure out as the grown-up how I'm going to bring about a natural consequence. It doesn't make parenting easier. I find it makes it more effective. Sometimes it's very hard to come up with the right consequences. It's not so simple. But it's more effective in the long run. Now, so in that case, that toy gets put in. I had the case again of a 13-year-old. The last case that I was dealing with just last week was after Purim, and the parent had asked the child to clean up their Mishlach Manot like all week. Purim was on Thursday. They were out for Shabbos, and it was on the dining room table the whole week. And they said before the next Thursday night, the next Friday, I need the table cleared for Shabbos. And the kids didn't do it. They threw it all out. Everything in the garbage. And I gave him a hug and a kiss. And that's awesome. Here were the instructions. You didn't do it. What happens when you don't take care of something? Now, we as grown-ups, that's a consequence all the time. You don't take care of something, you lose it. I would love to teach my children that with something so silly as chocolate and candy. Guess what message is conveyed without yelling, without screaming, without a lecture, without anything? Like, you left him out. I assumed it was garbage because you didn't clean it up like I asked. I assumed it was garbage. I threw it out.
In terms of cleaning up toys, what age could that method start to be effective?
Very early. There's no reason why that. The only issue there is whether or not the child's old enough to remember that the toy is gone. Like we once tried with a younger child, and they didn't remember that the toy disappeared. Right? And it's like okay, like they don't have an inventory of their toys.
Waiting for it.
Right? And I'm like. They don't care. They found something else to play with. So again, that all depends on the age of the child, whether or not it's a valuable toy to learn. But eventually, there'll be some toy that they didn't clean up, that they really want, and it's with empathy. Oh, I'm so sorry. I know you want to play with that toy, but last time I asked you to clean it, it wasn't cleaned up, so I assumed it's a bad toy to play with because it doesn't get cleaned up. And you walk away. And then you let them play with something else, And if they start to kvetch, you just go straight into, now sometimes you can move away from the kvetching also. You don't have to, but most of the time they're in your space. And just whenever you're ready to come back, and want to come back, would you like to play with something else? It's totally fine, but that toy, when you show, I'll do it. And they'll always say, I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it. And you say, yes, I know, you're going to show me with these toys that you can do it, and then I'll be happy to give you back your toy. That's the basic methodology. And to give you just an extreme example, an extreme example is, some of these are not so extreme, but like leaving it, I have older kids, and a carpool leaves at whatever time, and if a child's not ready that time, carpool leaves. Child walks, and it's like this is the structure. We're not waiting. These are the rules in life. If the train or plane leaves at this and this time, you got to be there. And if you're not, you lose. You snooze, you lose. And a child will walk to school. And whose fault is it? It's their fault. They didn't show up. And there's no discussion about it. That's the way that it is. Now, you have to be of a certain ilk to be able to do that. Not every parent is capable of that. Not every house is close enough to school, or every child's not necessarily old enough. But it's just that, here are the rules, and we just follow it through. What's the consequence of not getting ready? You miss your ride. That's what happens. I didn't do it. It's not my fault. I woke you up on time. You just didn't. I hadn't told you 1 hour, 5 minutes. I went through the whole thing perfectly, and you didn't wake up. That's how it goes.
A question specifically regarding a drastic example like that. So, hypothetically, it's not your family. Hypothetically, there's a family leaves their child at home because they miss carpool. Now the child's going to be late for school and whatever consequences come with that. I find it hard to believe that a 14, 15-year-old is not going to direct that anger at the parents who left. Even though they knew the rules, they knew the consequences. A little bit, but that's the better alternative than the parent sitting around and making everybody else late for a child that's not doing what they're supposed to do. It's true. So in other words, that you, as a parent, you take that anger and you say... I can give you the most extreme example we ever used for this. This is the most extreme. Yes. But everybody still remembers it. We once, this is back in Atlanta, we decided we were going to do a family trip somewhere. I was downtown, I think it was a march for some needy cause, and we were all as a family going to do it. And one kid, who at the time was probably, 8 or 9 or 10, decides, I'm not going. Just, flat out, like everybody's in the car, we have like 6 kids in the car, and one kid says, I'm not going. Okay, now, what do you do? You're 10 years old, I can't leave you at home, we're all going downtown. What are my options at this point? Right, just standard example, this is not making up anything wacky, like one child refuses to get in the car. I'm serious, like what are our options? Don't go, everybody's the thing. Correct. So now this one child is going to cause everybody else who's ready to go and do whatever not to go.
Call a babysitter.
Okay, call a babysitter. One parent stay back. One parent stays back. I'm just going to do what are our options as parents? I'm using this as an example. You'll come across things like, what do I do? I wrestle him in, which by a 9 or 10-year-old boy is not going to be pleasant. I call a babysitter. One parent stays back, which is going to be a disaster because that parent is going to be grumpy and angry the whole time anyway. Or everybody. Or everybody stays back, right? There are a bunch of bad options. So what we did is we called a babysitter. We called the babysitter from the car, called the babysitter, found somebody to come, and then we went. Now, what's a natural consequence from that? So what did this cost us? The babysitter. Cost us $20. Because you didn't want to come, this was our family activity, we all agreed that we were doing, and you sat and rebelled against the whole thing. $20. Guess what we did for the rest of the summer? We're an ice cream family. So when we would go out to ice cream, every kid would get a small. And this child got a kitty, and we kept track how much money it cost until he paid up the $20 for us having to get him a babysitter. Do you think that ever happened again in my family? Now that was a compromise that we made. Rivki and I, when we talked this through, we said, we asked him. We said, this cost us, when we got home, we said nothing at the time. We said nothing.
Did you say anything at the time of your staying with a babysitter?
Nothing.
You're not coming?
We said, we're going to call a babysitter. We called the babysitter. We left. We said zero. When we got back, we said, this cost us $20. How would you like to pay it? you can not buy ice cream at all, and then it would only take like 5 trips before you'll have paid it off. Or you can get a kiddie side, and it will take 10 trips, but at least you'll get something like everybody else. But it'll take 10. How would you rather pay this? And he made his decision, and that's what we did. And
did he try to say, I'm like, sorry, can you give me...
No, that was it. We paid $20. It was clear. He was old enough to understand that we had to get a babysitter because he didn't want to go. I said, I'm not paying $20 because you didn't want to go, so you'll pay for it. You don't have any money, so this is how you're going to pay for it.
But at the time, you didn't think it was like a viable, holy option to stay back, right? In other words, like...
No, this is what the family was doing, yeah. But that was the most extreme that we ever did. But I'm not suggesting that if you're not ready to do that, it's totally fine. But in terms of just, we're always going to be thinking, what did you decide? I can't control what's going on here. I'm only trying to work out what is the most natural consequence of this decision you made, and how can I figure out a way to make that a natural consequence? Now, it's not so easy. Well, let's go through more examples, but that's the basics of it.
I mean, that's assuming in the sense that you could impose on your child that they must go somewhere at all times.
Correct.
And you're not necessarily validating
Those are the family rules, 100%. In that example, this is what we're doing as a family. You're deciding you're opting out, and it costs us money because you opted out, so that's fine. You want to pay with it? That was the last time we had that problem. But again, even if you wouldn't do as extreme, let's say you would only make him do it once to get the message, as opposed to like actually do it all 5 times. But believe me, he made a party when he paid it off. It was like a big deal. Even if you only did it once, just to get the message across, in my mind, it's valuable that, again, I know how I'm handling situations. Like here's a standard everyday crisis, one child's refusing to get in the car. What do I do? So instead of my fighting to get a child in, which is at that age, I can't, like, okay, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna find another solution and then figure out how do I now get a 10-year-old to cover, if not the whole $20, something. I'm shifting my approach as to what it is that I'm doing. The child hits in the room, I know what I'm moving into. I gotta get the child out of the arena and give him an opportunity to come back. He's not coming for dinner. Going back to the dinner example, as a parent, are you okay with a child going to sleep without dinner? You don't have to answer out loud, but that's a question I'm asking.
Yes,
if you're okay with it, then it's safe to go through that example and to say, dinner's on the table, it will be there for the next 30 minutes. And then, after 15 minutes, to poke your head into the playroom and to say, 15 more minutes. After 10 minutes, to poke your head in and say, 5 more minutes. And then it's closed. Your child will throw a temper tantrum, and you will be with great empathy, like, oh, I hate going to sleep hungry also. I'm so sorry that you missed dinner. But the kitchen is closed. And then pivot and move. And then you will see, from then on out, when you call for dinner, your children will come. But you have to be okay sending your kid, in that example, sending your kid to bed without dinner. Because if you're not, and mom sneaks some peanut butter crackers in, like, forget the whole thing. But if you're willing to stick to your guns, and these were the rules, and the child didn't come, and with empathy, I'm like, so sorry that you didn't make it. It totally changes the way that things will go.
Is it ever helpful to explain what that natural consequence might be? Or
yeah, that was the same question that he was asking. It's worth saying it at the time. If you don't brush your teeth, it turns into a lot of threats. It turns into a lot of threats.
I just feel like with the kids, some of the disappointment would come from them being able to make the choice for themselves.
Totally, so again, I don't have a problem. Again, this is a tool that help. Again, it's bedtime, my child's not brushing their teeth. Like, what do I do? So the reason why we start yelling and threatening and beating them up is because I don't know what to do. How do I get my child to brush their teeth? I don't know what to do. How do I get my child into the bath? I don't know what to do. So this is like, okay, let's work it through. What's the consequence of not brushing teeth? That's an easy one. So if you want to say, like, brushing teeth, I'm waiting in the bathroom for the next 2 minutes. If you want to go that route and just say, I just want you to know that I can't give snacks to children who don't brush teeth, and that's just don't give a lecture. Just quick. It's just tell them what it is if you feel more comfortable with that. It's totally fine if you want to avoid, but I didn't know. It's fine. Some things you don't have to do that because it's natural, they'll know it. And if they would never have thought that they can't get ice cream the next day for brushing teeth, tell them. And then you just wait there, and then you exit, and then you move on to the next thing of the night. It's done, and then the next day, believe you me, they'll remember the next day that it was because when you point that and you say like I didn't do it. Let's just give a couple examples just to get the whole thing. Again, the example of forgetting, we spoke of this, they forgot their assignment, they forgot their baseball glove, they forgot a hockey stick. And you as a parent, they're calling you, and they want you to drop everything and to do something for them. These are great learning opportunities. Now, even we have many times done that, and many times we have not. And it's not available. And just to feel confident to say, I'm so sorry, sweetheart, I'm not available. And then put it back on them and say, like, what do you think is going to happen? That's a great question to ask to a child who forgot an assignment. It's like, oh, I wish I could bring it to you. What do you think is going to happen? And you're like you're really kidding. You want to know, like, what's going to happen? And they'll be like, I don't know, I'm going to lose 5 points. Like, oh, that's terrible. And that's it. Just say that. Like, leave it at that. And you're with them. Again, you're going back to what we spoke about earlier in the evening. You're like empathizing with them. You're reflecting the feeling. Like, I must be like scared. Like, what do you think is going to happen? But it's not my problem. It's their problem. They forgot whatever it was that they forgot. As far as that goes, let's throw out any examples that you're thinking of that we could try to work through to try to. It's always good to try to. Yeah.
I don't want to go to shul.
Okay, good one.
It's a very good one.
Okay, so here you have a value as we have as a family for you to go to shul. You don't want to go to shul, so how do I get you to go to shul? So we have our children. Right, great example. Now these are trick examples because it's from a religious perspective, in which we're imposing our religious beliefs and values on our children, who may or may not want to go. So the first question to ask is, I said, like, oh, I don't want to go. Why don't you want to go? It's a great question, as opposed to right away going into you have to, you must, this, that, and the other. Finding out because, if you say like, oh, I see you don't want to go to shul. Is there any reason why? Now, you might get something like, I don't like it, which is one thing, or you might get something like, this kid is mean, there's no group for me, I can't, which is very helpful. You might get a lot of information that you can actually address. It's not that they don't like going to shul, it's that they don't like this. You might, again, these are real, you might be like, I don't have any clothing that looks right. I don't like my dress, I don't like my suit, I wish I had a tie, I don't like waiting.
Stay home and play with my toys.
Right? There can be lots of things that just to know what you're dealing with. So before we make it into a religious crisis with a 6-year-old, it's often, which is often not, there's something else there. So that's always good just to address it. But then, okay, the bottom line is the kid doesn't want, I don't want to go to shul. I don't want to go to shul. So as a parent, then we have to figure out, well, at what point is it imperative that our kids do go to shul? And there's no simple answer to that, even as a rabbi. It's like, I don't know, 6, 8, 10. At what age does it become something as a value that we do want our children to go? But whenever we would hit that age, so then what's the consequence as a religious family that you're not going to shul? What does that look like then for Shabbos? So that could be something, I'm making this up on the fly, and this is where, again, this tool doesn't make parenting easier, it just makes it more effective. So you have to sit down and often think this through. You sit down with your spouse and say, like, okay, well, it makes sense. But what are they doing at home while they're not going to shul? So let's say there's something more enticing there than going to shul. Again, if I like my Magnetos, I'd rather play with Magnetos, I'd rather read this book, I'd rather do whatever it is. I like my snacks, I like my Shabbos cereal. So it's totally fine to say, like in my house we have Shabbos cereal, which is, as we've gotten older, the rules have totally gone by the wayside. But it used to be, when we were on top of our game, so Shabbos cereal was for Shabbos, and during the week they ate something which was at least ostensibly more healthy. That was the rule. So if you had such a rule, it would simply be, Shabbos cereal is for children who go to shul on Shabbos. It's no longer just Shabbos cereal, it's shul cereal, in which you've just simply adapted and you're trying to create situations in which I can't force you to go to shul, but this is a treat. So this is a treat for kids who go to shul. I can give it to you before. What's that?
That's a bribe.
So the difference is between a bribe and it's a good point.
They're unrelated. Cereal and shul is completely unrelated.
So unless if it's a treat, in other words, why do we have Shabbos cereal? Just it's a special Shabbos treat. But if we're trying to create a Shabbos, you're asking a good point.
Shabbos in itself is
correct. Generally, it's enough on its own. But if you see that it doesn't work or that it's too enticing to be home, you want to sort of shift it. There is, it's a very fair point. The difference between a consequence and a punishment and a bribe, there's a fine line between it. That's why I've been trying to stress the word consequence, and that's where the word comes in, that it's natural. Like not brushing your teeth, you don't get candy. If they're not related, it turns into either a bribe or a punishment, and it's a fine line that you don't want to just make it into a bribe. But it's where this is for, where it's with. And that example, which on the spot you pointed out fairly, is teetering on the line of, well, I'll give you this bribe if you go. Because it's sort of a special Shabbos treat, but sort of not, and where that particular
if you go to
example,
shul, you'll get a lollipop.
Right, also becomes like a bribe in this. That's where these, almost the difference usually is. I'm glad you brought this up. I want to focus because I think this is where how I would make the distinction. Are you saying it before or after? In other words, when you say, even in my example, I think is on the wrong side of the equation. If you say, if you go to shul, you'll get your Shabbos cereal, you get a lollipop as a bribe. If they don't get, and this is where you can sort of manipulate things with kids who come back from shul, get a certain treat, where it's, because they went, this is going to shul gets this, and then the other child was left out of that. It happens afterwards is often not as much of a bribe as, where things happen. We would often create circumstances where we would, oh my goodness, I'm sorry. It's really late. Yeah,
We're enjoying it.
I just realized how late it is. We would create situations that would, we'll wrap it up with this, I'm sorry. Where let's say there was an incident in the house and somebody wasn't listening to whatever was going on. Everyone was following whatever was going on, and one child is, for whatever reason, totally, disregarding everything. And then we decide to have an ice cream party. Because it would allow us to take a reward for some, and others were like, listen, if you didn't do X, Y, or Z, again, I'm not giving you a clear example of that, but you can sometimes manipulate circumstances that allow for natural consequences. For example, let's take the brushing teeth. Let's go to that. Let's say you generally don't give treats. But you have one kid you're having trouble with brushing teeth. The next day, you decide, today, we're giving snacks. And then you would say, oh yeah, but if you don't brush teeth, then it's not fair to have it. Even though we don't normally give snacks, but we created an environment where it's a natural consequence of not brushing teeth. How can I give you a sugary snack? Even though I don't normally do that on a Tuesday, but on this Tuesday I decided to. And then, that's sort of where, again, this is a tool. There's a whole book, a lecture series, they take it seriously. Every scenario would be plugged into this. I'm presenting it as a tool that you should feel comfortable exploring and trying out in the right examples. Don't go, if this is of value to you, it's worth reading the book and getting familiar with it. A very simple example, and maybe this I'll clear, there's some other examples, but with this I'll conclude. I had, and just as an application, I was once talking to a parent who had a maybe 18 or year and a half old child in his arms while we're talking at Kiddush. And the child kept slapping the parent's cheek. Have you ever seen such a scenario like that? And the parent kept saying, no hitting, no hitting. And it was very distracting. The conversation was like, they kept doing it. And I kept thinking, boy, just put the child down. Like, what would be a manifestation of this? Like, here I have a child hitting. So you could say the first time, no hitting, and then the child hits it again. What should happen? What's the child going to do? Cry. Right? Going to cry? Up. Pick the child up. What's the child going to do next?
Yeah.
Correct. Then what do you do?
Put it down.
Put them down.
What's going to happen after that? You're done. I'm telling you, then the child's going to say, up. And you say, like, no hitting. You pick the child up. I can guarantee that child will not hit you again.
And what if it's like a 8-year-old?
So.
No, who's like annoying you when you're in the middle of a conversation and you're just like 1 minute, and you're talking and they're like.
Okay, so two things. Number one, when you say 1 minute,
It's not hypothetical.
when you say 1 minute,
right.
so 2 points. What does that mean to a child, an 8-year-old?
They're not important.
When you say 1 minute. No, this is an important discussion.
1 year.
They actually think, okay, in 1 minute you'll be with me, or in some short amount of time. What do we mean when we say 1 minute?
When you're finished.
When I'm finished, whatever I'm doing. Meanwhile, again, talk about the slot machine. How long does this child have to wait for your attention? When you say 1 minute, how long does this child have to wait? I don't know. Neither do you. Is it 2 minutes? Is it 5 minutes? Is it 10 minutes? Is it 20 minutes? We've basically just told the child, I'll be with you soon, and actually given the child no guideline as to when we'll give them their attention. Because we actually don't know. I'm on the phone. I don't know if it's going to take 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I'm just trying to say, like, not now. So we just need to say, you could say, like, I'm on the phone now. We just be sensitive to the fact that we've put the child in a position in which they have no idea when they're getting what we promised them. That's just a side point. But now we have the situation. We have an 8-year-old that's annoying us. With an 8-year-old, so first, sometimes we can remove ourselves from the situation. If you have a nagging 8-year-old, you can go into another room and close the door and conclude your conversation in another place. That's always a tool that you have available. You say, like, I'm busy now, I can't hear, I'm going to go somewhere else. You could always do that, and then we'll bang on the door, so you have to go into a room that has 2 doors. You can't always do that. That doesn't always work. I'm just saying that's a tool.
What if you're like talking to someone face to face?
Like a child.
Like a child. And it's not a baby, but it's an 8-year-old.
Right.
That's
So
like pulling on you. I want to go, I want to get out of here.
right. So I've never seen that before, but theoretically, if there were to be something like that, so you would start with an I statement of, I don't like it when I'm pulled. That's the best statement. I've said that many, many times. In other words, instead of saying, stop pulling me, which always just entices, another pull. Always, because that's what we would do if someone told us, like, don't do this. Like, oh yeah, I'll do it. So you would put it in the I statement of, I don't like it when I'm being pulled. And then don't say anything else. Just an I statement, I don't like that. I say, we're going to leave in a few minutes. Right now I'm talking, I don't like being pulled. Those are just tools. There's no great solution because the circumstance is a bad one. A child's been there for however long they want to leave. They're 8 years old. How many tools do they have in their toolbox to be patient for something that's contingent upon a bunch of grown-ups that they have no control over and no idea when it's going to end? So a little bit is just being aware that they're in a bad place. In the same way as we can't parent when we're angry, you also can't parent a child that's angry. They're not ready to hear something. So when you have that situation, so just be aware of, we're in a bad situation right now because we have a child who wants to leave, which is fair, and we're telling them in a few minutes, which could mean, some weeks it means 5 minutes, some weeks it means 10 minutes, some weeks it means 10. They don't know what it means, and they have no control over the situation. So we sort of want to try to give them a little bit of control. So what does that look like in terms of control? So you want to say, do you want to wait inside for me? Do you want to wait outside for me? Do you want to wait over there? We try, but it's a bad situation because we want to talk and they want to go and there's nothing for them to do. So just being aware of that is half of the problem, is at least being sensitive that we're getting annoyed at them and it's like, what do we want from them? So I'm not really answering your question, but something, but at least try to put it in, yeah. Okay, if anyone's late, I don't realize how late it is. So if anyone, I'm happy to stay. If you want to stay and ask questions, it's totally fine, but I don't want to hold anybody hostage given the hour, but yeah.
Oh, I can wait until after.
Do it.
Ask. We all have questions to ask.
What happens if they're back to the hitting question or something similar? What if there's a time lapse or you're in the car where you can't remove the child and you're not doing the whole lecture or punishment or threatening? Like,
this is a love and logic tool. They have a great phrase that says, I'm going to have to think about this, I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Meaning, no, that's how you say to a child. Meaning, you say, in other words, a child does something, and you're like, oh, I have no idea how to respond to this right now. I'm at a total loss because they just did something, and you don't know what to do. So there's a great tool that says, no, we're in control, we're the parents, so we don't want to let our children know that we have no idea. So you would say something like, wow, that was an interesting decision. Daddy and I are going to talk about that a little bit later. We'll let you know what we think is appropriate. And just that, and then you pivot and leave. Let the child know that
when you're in the car, yeah.
Right, like you saw, you got it. Like, well, that was an interesting decision you just made. Dad and I will have to talk about that. And I can say, like, right now I'm a little bit too frustrated to even think about it, but we'll talk about this later. That's also a great thing to say. Like, we'll talk about this later. I'm a little too angry, I'm too frustrated, or listen, I'm in the car, I really can't address this right now, but that was an interesting decision, we'll talk about this a little bit later. And then again, then you have to do all the work of, it has to be natural consequence, not like a total punishment, but something that makes sense. It's not always easy, but there's no reason why you can't stall a decision. You don't, just because you're a parent doesn't mean that you're like, I got everything correct. It's not true. I can speak from experience. You just, I don't know, like this, like wow, I never saw that before. That was it. And you could say like, that, interesting decision. Sorry you chose that. We'll have to talk. I can't even, I'm not sure. You could say like, I'm too frustrated to think right now, or I'm busy doing something else, but we'll talk about that. And that lets the child know that you got it and that it's coming. And then you just have to, then you have to work out what it is that we're going to do. It doesn't have to be so severe. It really doesn't. It just has to be that the child understood that they did something and that there was some consequence that was natural because of what they did. We don't want to be imposing our will. We want them to learn through their decisions. That if they behave like this, then I can't take you to a play date. If you hit your sister in the car, how can I take you to a play date? I'm afraid you're going to hit your friend. I won't hit my friend. And you could tell me that, but I just saw you hit your sister, so I can't take you. If you canceled a play date, let's say that would be...
That's the ultimate.
Yeah, that would be...
But again, in other words, you would then have to deal with short-term breakdown, total short-term, but you just... If you were on the way to a play date, or you had one even the next day set up, and to me that's a total natural consequence. If you hit your sibling, I can't send you to your friend's house. I'd be way too afraid that you're going to hurt, that something would happen that would make you upset. Use that language. That something would happen that would make you upset, and you would hit them. I don't think it's fair to go. And so they will go. Then you'll have to deal with the fallout. But long term, very effective. That when I hit, I can't be around people, and you just, it's a natural, like, listen, it's fair. If you hit somebody, I can't put you in that situation. I'm not going to be there to protect that person. I don't think it's a fair thing. So those are, it's that line of thinking. Again, I just want to stress, for whatever it's worth, I have literally, like, read the book, I've been to 2 seminars, and listened to maybe 7 hours of lectures on this, like, over, like, 15 years. So like I'm not sure how like I'm conveying it, but before you try it, if this makes sense, it's worth. I'm just giving like tools. The book, it's called Love and Logic. It's out there. There are lectures online. You can buy the book. It's worth it just to feel the confidence of I get it. I've been through it. I understand. Try it out because I'm telling you, it's very effective under many circumstances. Not every circumstance. But under a lot of circumstances, it's really, really effective. And it gives me the peace of mind of, I know how I'm reacting in those situations where most of us, like, I don't know what to do. What do I do? Like, okay, I got it. There's arena. Can I remove the child from the arena? Is there a natural consequence? It just gives me a train of thought as to how I'm doing it. And now, like, it's been years already, I just start Kiddush. And by the end of Kiddush, everybody's like, I haven't withheld grape juice in like years, but nothing. It's done already. I start with nobody, but before I'm done, everybody's at the table. There's no yelling. There's no screaming. I just say Kiddush and I start. By the way, my Rifki doesn't like it, but I do that at Shabbos lunch too, and everyone's milling around the kitchen. And if you have to wait for everybody to come to the table, nobody comes because you haven't started Kiddush. Why should I come? I'm waiting for everybody to come. I just start. And guess what happens when you start Kiddush? Everybody comes to the table. No, not everybody likes that. It's like, but whatever. It's effective. Just be like, I'm starting Kiddush, and everybody comes. So those are again. I don't want to like. We spoke for more than an hour, but it's like a whole approach. It's a valuable approach. I find it very effective. But if you don't feel like confident in it, so I'm just sharing it. Read up. We can talk more about it. I love it. I'm happy to answer individual questions as we go along and try to figure it out.
Just a good question with tonight, with all the examples. Is it done, or do you rehash and re-go over
Yeah,
the
good
situation?
kids will always test the limits. Good
But
kids.
Like the Tuesday night happened with the brushing teeth. Wednesday they didn't get the snack. Things are going well. Like, do you bring it up again on like a third? Like, is it done?
No,
It's
yeah.
been there,
If
done,
they,
and
yeah,
it's gone.
unless they do the behavior again. Yeah, but you don't
But
need
I'm
to
saying
withhold.
if
Yeah.
things are done, you don't go back
I don't think
like
so.
when
Yeah.
this kid did. Okay.
Yeah, no, let them, they learned, and as long as the behavior can, again, in the same way as like when you take the kid out of the arena, I want them back in. I'm not interested in withholding the thing. I just want them to learn that there are consequences to their decisions, but then put them back in the arena and let them try again. That's really my goal. Okay, I'm sorry it went so long. Again, I hope it was valuable, and I'm happy to continue the discussion and really look into it because it's really, really, really a great tool. Last week we were discussing how to speak to create a certain environment, and this is more how to react to when things happen and to have the confidence and the peace of mind of like, well, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how we're going to handle it, and more often than not, you'll find it very, very effective. Okay.
Thanks, Rabbi.
I have moves. Hold on.